two, one. Let's jam. YouTube, do it. Do it. God, I hope it's streaming, because sometimes YouTube's live control is terrible. Okay. I'm going to wait a sec to make sure that this thing is actually live. Because it's taking its sweet time. Hey, I see things that indicate I should be working. Hopefully everybody can hear me fine. I have been having quite the time. I'm sorry for the delay. My lungs have been apparently revolting. I've been had a chest cold like 2 weeks ago, which you guys probably saw that in one of the video, me talking about it, and or just you could hear it in my voice. And I've been coughing gunk out of my lungs for the last 2 weeks, basically, and I just had this massive coughing fit. So I didn't want to do that live. I wonder why, right? I didn't want to like just sit here and cough my lungs out like crazy live on a stream about fish. I figured that would be something I could delay just a little bit, and you guys wouldn't mind. Oh, so if I do like randomly cough through the stream, one, I will try to mute my mic, just as a heads up. But yeah, just be aware I'm still getting some gunk out of my lungs, and that's gonna happen. So chat, hello. Just because this is the first question and it has nothing to do with fish, but I want to answer it. 49ers versus Seahawks. We're in CenturyLink Field. We're in the madhouse known as the Clink. I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. Of course, I am going to be a homer and say the Seahawks are going to win. I just think that Russell doesn't like to lose, and he lost what I would argue is an embarrassing game for the offense last week. So I think he's going to smash the 49ers just into the pavement all day long. But 49ers are a very, very good team. So you could very well say that the NFC Championship is the Hawks and 49ers, the 49ers and Saints, or the Hawks and Saints. And all three of those are very accurate based on just how good those three teams are. And you could argue that those teams are almost worthy of Super Bowl if it weren't for the fact that the Ravens are just so freaking good as well. So anyway, let's some football talk. We'll not do too much football talk, I hope, because I'm sure there's a few people who are like, who cares about that weird round orb? You know, just saying. Okay, Jeff, I'm gonna answer this only because I see it fast enough. Are we aware of the fact that Russell Wilson is the most winning quarterback in history through his first 8 seasons? He also has one of the best passer ratings in the entirety of the NFL's history as a career passer. Just saying, Richard Sherman's lost his step, bro. Anyway, so yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of people like Big D Smoke, because I was watching some bowl games, some college football, stuff like that. It's a good time. It's a holiday season. Lots of fun stuff. Hope everybody had a really good Christmas. Mine was pretty sweet. You'll notice like this. Yeah, when I do this live, I always screw it up. So this picture behind me is something my mom made for me. And that's done with, I think they call it diamond point?
Diamond painting.
Diamond painting? All right, thank you, dear. My girlfriend's over there. Anyway, so it's tons of teeny tiny beads, and if the light I was futzing with earlier was working correctly, it will it will have like this cool iridescence off the beads and stuff. But she did that by hand, and these things are teeny tiny. They're like this. So it was really cool of her to make this. She made one for my brother too, which is really awesome. It was this cool, like, my brother's really into white tigers, so she made this really awesome like white tiger with a cub picture. It's really beautiful. But the koi one for me is, especially because you've got like the Tancho koi, which is the one with the big red dot right in the middle. The kind of the almost Japanese flag style fish, and Tanchos are one of my favorites. It's those and Kohakus are probably my 2 favorite koi. And if I ever have koi again, I will definitely have like one really nice Tancho, maybe 6. It's like, I love Tanchos. So anyway, let's go through I guess some announcements, and I'll get to Q&A. So for Q&A, you guys can just at Bentley Pasco. That's the easiest way for me to see your questions and answer to them. Let's try not to derail too hard. I don't want the folks who like have no interest in football to be like, why is this guy on a fish stream babbling about football? I love football, but you know, this is technically a fish YouTube channel. So I want to talk about a couple of things for 2020, and then we'll get rolling into Q&A. So I'll take hopefully not more than 10 minutes, and I'm still watching chat, but anyway. If you saw, I put up the video on Christmas Day. I had a poll in it, and there's also a poll in the community tab. So for those of you who visit both, you technically get to vote twice of kind of how you want things to change on the channel. So we've done Tank of the Week for 5 months. By the time that we will kind of finish the last episodes I have planned, or at least have partially filmed, kind of a combo of the two, we'll be at 6 months of doing Tank of the Week. And I just feel like after 6 months, it's worth asking you guys, like, hey, this is something that was generated basically because of you folks. So do you want to keep doing this? Do you want to do something different? And so there's several options there. I'll leave that to that particular video for like the full details, but please, 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 if you haven't, I'm sure Candy and all her amazing powers will link the video. Go check that video out after the stream or whenever at some point, or go to the community tab. Just look at the options and vote. I really just want as many votes as I can. I want as much input as I can possibly get, because I want to feel like I'm serving as many of you as possible as far as the piece of content that I feel is kind of guided by you guys. So I'll leave it like that. Like this, the Saturday videos will remain as is. It's just kind of, do we want to change the middle of the week? And there's several different options. The one I expected to not have a chance is doing really well, actually. So it's still kind of a close tie between two, but make sure you vote. I'm not going to say which two. You'll see after you vote. I just really want your feedback. I'd really, really appreciate it. It's kind of one of those things where I like being able to work with you guys, and just I enjoy making content based on what you guys want to see, but I also enjoy doing kind of the usual stuff that I do, like product reviews, plant stuff, battling about rainbow fish endlessly, those kind of things. I just want to make sure that some of that content is kind of controlled by you folks, because you guys give me your time, and your time is very, very precious. My time is very precious, so I respect the fact that you all give me your time pretty regularly. So it's kind of my way to say I respect it, and I appreciate it, and that's how I give you a little content, basically, that the whole of the community gets to choose, gets made, because you give me your time, and I appreciate that. So that's that spiel. Second, I had talked in the video about the Brightwater media that I had a meeting with them. Well, that was last night, and I was late to that meeting due to work, but what else is new? Anyway, but it was really good. We sat at a Starbucks and talked. I guess full disclosure, they gave me some products and bought me a cup of tea. So I guess this message is sponsored. I don't even know anymore with the stupid FTC nonsense around COPPA and new guidelines for being a YouTuber. Anyway. So we sat down and we talked a lot. They gave me some really cool stuff about their products, as far as information that I don't think is out there. The first thing I told them was like, you need to tell this story and you need to figure out how to tell it, because on an Amazon page, like, you don't see this, and the way for people to understand why your products are interesting or matter, or why you've chosen to bring this stuff to the United States matters with that story. And let me tell you one of them, okay? So I have stuff here. I have props. One sec. Okay, so this in that video I talked about the X series media, and this is a bag of it here. Let's see, X. It's really cool. I have an open one somewhere. I'll pull one out later, but all of the sponge media that they make, which sponge might not be the right word. It's technically a foam and not actually sponge. And I know this is like splitting hairs, but it does have to do with the manufacturing process of whether it's sponge or foam. So this channel is definitely not for kids. Definitely not for kids. I try not to swear just because that's old radio habits, but the things that I talk about are definitely not designed for children, in the sense that I probably science a little too hard and babble a little too endlessly about keeping fish. Anyway, it's just a great comment in there from Stephen P. So their foam, right, the smaller stuff is 60 ppi, which is insanely fine. And I think in the video I said it was 20 ppi, and that's for the big foam blocks. And I think I forgot to mention that like the smaller stuff is 60 ppi, which is why I'm obsessed with the texture of it, because it's so fine. And the story behind this is really cool. So the guy who engineered this product at first, so I met with a lady named Sunny. She's the founder of Brightwater in the United States, but she's a hobbyist first, and like a really meticulous hobbyist. So she, as a career, is a landscape architect. So very much like the art side of landscape, and she's a big koi person. So everywhere she's ever lived, she's had massive koi ponds in her backyard, and she's always like hated the media that's out there for filtration systems, especially for ponds, because it breaks down, or it requires significant maintenance if you want to do a pond right. There's a lot of things that are out there, and she knows a bunch of breeders kind of all over the world, including Taiwan. And the particular person who engineered their foam is in Taiwan, who's an arowana breeder. And he'd been breeding arowanas for something like a decade, and just hated the other like sponge material out there. Ceramic doesn't give him the water quality he wants as far as like how particulate free and clean the water is. So he engineered this crazy sponge with some Chinese manufacturers, and it's designed for wastewater, which is really ridiculous. So this the crazy thing is like your sponges that you're going to get are going to break down over time. They've had this media in a wastewater treatment facility for 10 years, and they've had no more. It depends on the media. So the more coarse media is not as, it will break down a little bit more, but the finer media has had 1% loss over a decade, and that's just from the media like bumping up against each other. So it's kind of sort of eroding lightly, in the sense that it's the friction from bouncing into each other over time has only caused 1% loss in a decade. That's insane by the standards of us, because like your ceramic media is slowly going to disintegrate over time, and like all the stuff that we normally use, you have to replace every 3 or 4 years. And sometimes you get a sponge that'll last you a lot longer, like some of the Poire foam will last quite a lot longer, but this is just nonsensical stuff that like got engineered because people were like, it's not good enough for me breeding my like, giant dragonfish. I need better, so I'm going to make better. It's just bonkers nonsense that they're trying to bring here, which to me is just really cool. So let me answer a question in chat, because I think it's really important. So just like, this is kind of some of the stuff that we talked about while I was out at Brightwater with our meeting last night. And there's some other stuff I have, and we'll talk about some of that stuff probably in upcoming videos, where I'll talk some more about some of the testing I'm doing with their stuff, just because I want to like really put it through its courses and see from a perspective of how much biocapacity it has compared to the stuff that we're used to working with. So like the first thing I'm doing is the X will be in a Zis filter instead of the little K1 columnist media that comes in the little Zis bubble filter, and they'll each be in probably like I think I'm going to do 20-gallon tanks instead of 5-gallon buckets, just so there's slightly more water volume, but Basically, they'll be in their own water systems, and we'll side-by-side comparison them by adding raw ammonium chloride, which, Fritz makes an ammonium chloride powder. Yeah, so Rack don't for Brightwater, they sell everything through Amazon. So their website, the US stuff is all done through Amazon, which I can give you guys a link in just a sec. But it's very, very cool products. Seriously, like, go watch the video where I talk about it, because I think the details are important. And I don't want to go into some giant diatribe on it today, just because I do want to get to questions. So from while I look that, I'll look at the link. I'll answer UG Aquatics question. So about the lights and testing lab in general. So you guys remember, like, I had we'll call it the death explosion at my house of pipes, and that lovingly set me back several $1,000s trying to get that fixed, because my shower decided it wanted to leak all over my house. And that stalled me getting testing lab going. Well, good news, all of the stands and tanks are ordered and will be here in another, like, week and a half. So once they're here, I can there you go. There's one to all the Brightwater stuff. Kenny's also linked one. Mine is an affiliate link. Yes, if you purchase anything through the affiliate link, I do get a commission. It is a paid link. There's some specific phrase that Amazon loves when it comes to text, but I make a commission, it goes toward the channel, blah, blah, blah. But that's all their products on Amazon, if you want to check them out or get a look at them. They have some really cool, like, video that they don't have online that I'm getting a hold of from them, and I'll talk about it more when we do some, like, serious testing of their products. But anyway, I have all the lights. The tanks and the stands are on the way. I'll have the filters, and I need to heat them. But filters and heat will be also picked up here very shortly. I'm probably going to go to, like, the co-op or something this weekend and go pick up, like, some aqua clears and just make it simple hang on back, so it's nothing too crazy. I don't want to use sponges because I want plenty of room inside the tank for just plants. And then once the tanks are up, full of substrate, and have had time to cycle a little bit, then I will get plants and get it planted and get going. So I know it's delayed, and I know that people really want to see it, but I've between having my money get thrown at my stupid shower and my walls and my floor and my ceiling of the bathroom downstairs and those walls, it just stalled plans. Like, I do this out of my fun money, so to speak, of my budget every given month. So I just had to kind of, like, bite the bullet, not have any fun money for a little while, and then get things to do to get to where I can get testing lab going out of my fun money again. So it just took a little bit. Yeah, that sucked, but it is coming. Promise. It's not like I literally went to, because Petco has $1 per gallon sale again. So I went into a Petco. I had to order the stands I want, just because they're those cheap Imaginatarium stands. Yeah, like AquaPro's Mike has used them. They're just really good for a cheap solution rather than building something. Building is actually, to build them right, is probably more expensive than those little steel metal stands that they do cheap when they're on sale, which they are on sale right now. And then, $1 per gallon, so I can get brand new 40 breeders for $50 or whatever it is. So yeah, those will be coming. There is some weird wonky stuff I have to figure out space-wise in my garage, but that should be done in this weekend or something along those lines. And then I'll have space once everything shows up. We'll be getting it set up and getting, water filtration, heat, and substrate all into them, and then get them rolling, and I'll put in a plant order. And once plants show up, we'll start the initial filming for the launch of Testing Lab, and then I'll explain, like, the full process of what we're doing, how we're going to test these lights in that video, and you guys will see that probably like start of February. I know it sounds like it's a long time away, but realistically, it's like, it's 4 weeks. It's not that bad. I just need that kind of time to get things set up, cycled, and going. It's really what it comes down to. Plus, stuff isn't arriving until late next week, which is how they do the shipping. And I need my cousin's going to help me go pick up the 40 breeders because like they don't fit in my car and they don't deliver to house your glass tanks. So I'm trying to rope him into helping me out. So yeah. Plus 10 off 30. Oh, you can get $10 off 30 right now too. That's kind of cool. I'll have to look that up because I will then buy each 40 breeder tank individually and get $10 off each one if I can. We'll see if Petco lets me do that. I'm sure they'll bitch about it, but anyway. So 2 basically testing things that are happening, and then we'll get into questions. So we will have the Brightwater versus the K1 columnist media and the ZIS. That's the first test. Later, I am going to test their ceramic media against your standard BioRing against BioHome Ultimate. So for those who are either aware of BioHome or big fans of BioHome, I have some things to say about that media, and I'm just going to prove it with science. So we'll do it that way. Let's put it that way. Yeah, no, isn't that the sad part, KP, is that the tank is the cheap part of the hobby most of the time. So especially with small tanks, you're like, oh yeah, I can get a 10-gallon for $10. That ain't so bad. That ain't so bad. Then you look at all the other stuff and you're like, oh. But it's a passion hobby. That's how you do. So anyway, so we'll have several different medias being tested. One cat meowing his brains out through the door over there, and sorry, our male cat is like losing his mind because he can't come in the bedroom. And then we'll have the light test in testing lab, and as testing lab gets rolling and we do the full light tests, we'll eventually use some like really high end filter or filter media testing, things like that. But we can do some smaller testing very simply with just an easy setup and some ammonia chloride. It's really simple to actually do that stuff. But give you guys more scientific, if you really want to know bio capacity of specific things, we'll get that covered. Oh, the 10 off of 30 ends tomorrow? Oh, all right, I'll miss that. That's whatever. If I got to pay an extra $10 for stuff, I'm not that worried about it. Okay, so we will do questions. We will do questions now. I have babbled endlessly about all sorts of stuff that's coming up. But make sure you guys do, please go look at that video that came out Christmas for voting as far as what we're going to do in 2020 for kind of our midweek series. I'd really like to have all of you vote and put in your opinion. That would be great. Let's see here. So I had a great question, and I want to get to it. It's about Hydra. Okay, so Walking Totems said, I have a Hydra problem and just shipped in poison. Oh, it's shrimp safe, but it's snail safe. If not, please can you tell me how I save them? So I guess it would be what that company is. I guess Ian Cooley is mentioning that Z1 is for Hydra, that is shrimp and snail safe. So the way that I've always taken care of Hydra when I've gotten it is changing the way I feed. So most of your fish and shrimp, because like Hydra will attach to something and stay in place, where shrimp, you can get them to go to food in other places and they'll graze a lot. But if you water change a bunch, and or at least do a water change and some general maintenance, but also don't feed for a couple days. Things like Hydra and Planaria less so than Hydra, but Hydra especially, they don't last as long without food as things like our shrimp, and they need things up in the water column because they sit attached and they just kind of wave about, right? You know, they're like the wacky inflatable arm tube guy. They just sit there and flail about trying to catch things, kind of like how shrimp filter feed the wood shrimp, right? Well, if there's no food in the water column, they can't eat. And if they can't eat, they die fast. And I mean real fast. So most of the times when I've ever had Hydra is when I'm feeding lots of baby brine shrimp. And you get Hydra will break out, right? Well, all you do is stop feeding brine shrimp for like 3 days and do a couple water changes and they're gone. They just die. They die off. So it's not, you don't necessarily need a poison or something to kill Hydra. You just have to like change the amount you feed, the way you feed, and do some extra maintenance that you normally don't do. That's it. Like, that's the easiest way to take care of Hydra. It works without fault. And especially in the case of shrimp, if you have shrimp and snails, you can put food like in the middle of the tank, way away from where the Hydra are, because you're going to see the Hydra on the surface. Like those Zoomed banquet blocks or something I really love for my shrimp. They'll move, the shrimp and snails will move to the food, and the Hydra will stay stuck in place. And then you don't let any food get into the water column, and you just watch them die. Now, you need to water change a bunch, because you don't want to, if you have a lot of Hydra especially, you don't want to cause some kind of ammonia spike. That's bad, right? We don't want our water quality going bad. But, and yeah, and there you go. Like, you can, if you have plenty of food, just, the big thing is making sure there's not enough stuff up in the water column that the Hydra are feeding off of. So, all those organic compounds that are breaking down are probably putting something in the water column. You just gotta basically find a way to make sure that the Hydra can't get to the food. And realistically, you could take like a shrimp net or something like that and temporarily move your snails or move your shrimp if you really need to bomb your tank. But you really probably don't need to bomb your tank. Just saying. I know it's not the easiest, like, just add this to your water and everything will be fine, and that's what most aquarists want, but 90% of the time, the way that we solve problems is just by patience and diligence. That's the way that, like, all the people who are the best, and there are people that are way better at this than I ever will be. Master Breeder Dean, for example. And just the way that they deal with problems is patience and diligence. And I'm seriously, like, I know that a fish can last this long without food, without any negative impact. But a Hydra can only last this long. So all I have to do is push past where the Hydras can live, but make sure that the fish are fine. Do a small feeding just for the fish or just for the shrimp, and then not feed anymore and keep pushing that line. Hydra will die off and you don't have to worry about them. Same thing can be done with lots of other problematic things. It's harder to do with, say, like a planaria because they're more mobile, but it's the easiest way. Cyanobacteria, I saw this question too from Julie. There's two ways you deal with cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria typically starts to form when you don't have enough oxygen in your water system. So it is, most of the negative bacterias tend to occur when you don't have really high oxygen content in your water. You can't stop all of them, let's be clear. And some places are more susceptible to cyanobacteria than others, like the Northwest. It's really easy to get cyanobacteria just because of the way our water is. Some places, like, it's easier to have Hydra in your water than others, or some other types of parasites. It's all locale based. If you want to just nuke the cyanobacteria, you use an antibiotic. It's a bacteria, it'll kill it. You can use erythromycin. It's one of the things that it actually is pretty effective at killing off. You could, if you don't have erythromycin, you could look at something like Neoplex or Canaplex. They're both pretty good. Metronidazole is also very good. These are all fairly common fish meds that are available in most countries. There are some countries where they're not available because they have far more stringent laws than the United States. You could also spot use hydrogen peroxide to kill the bacteria in its spot. So You can either do that out of a milliliter dropper and drop it right on the top, or if the cyanobacteria is toward the top, you can literally get it in a spray bottle and spray it onto it, like drop your water level like you're doing a water change, spray it on there, and then add fresh water. And once the hydrogen peroxide hits the water, it breaks down very quickly into just hydrogen and oxygen and becomes safe. These are all ways to get rid of cyanobacteria. There's also like the long term of slowly identifying why the cyanobacteria occurred in the first place and fixing all of the parameters in your water around that. I've had cyanobacteria problems in tanks where I've used pool filter sand in my water. And so, like, my answer to that has just been, I'm not going to use pool filter sand anymore. Because that tends to be where I have the problem. And there's some other, I know a lot of the other little things that are going into place that make that happen. But it's just the ways that, like, we can address the problem is recognizing patterns and then breaking that pattern so that we fix the root of the issue. But their temporary solutions can be very, very fast and simple. So I hope that helps. And Aquatic Highs is kind of asking, is our Hydra even a problem? So Hydra can be deadly to baby shrimp. Typically not adult shrimp. I don't know how bad a problem is. Just usually when you start getting Hydra, just like when you start getting algae, like Redfish Bluefish is saying this, it's almost spot on to what I was about to say. More often than what that is it's actually a symptom of something that we, the human, are doing wrong. So usually it's like you're feeding too much, or you're, in the case of algae, too much light, things like that. So dial those things back and solve the problem, and it will really just tell you like how to get your system in balance. It's kind of like in acupuncture, right? Or a lot of like Eastern medicine, where they care about the balance of your organs and your whole system being in balance. If you've ever been to an acupuncturist, I have. And sometimes if you're like really Western medicine minded, you're just like, sounds all right. All right. You know, it's one of those things where you're just kind of like, well, I don't know that you're explaining it the way I want. Like, I'm super analytical brained, and when I heard explanations, I was just like, that does not sound like science at all. But in the end, like, kind of it is. It's just the way it's explained because it's traditional medicine type stuff, right? But you have this balance that really matters in acupuncture. The same thing actually really applies to aquatics, in that like your water chemistry, the ecosystem that we're creating in our fish tank, there is a balance to it, and when something gets out of whack is when the problems happen. So there's too much food, maybe it's too much phosphate in the water, or we've put too much light in the tank. Speaking of light, I have not turned on the light for my fish tank behind me. Gotta let the guys back there have a little light. I'll let the plants have some light too. Jeez. Well, we're what, 35 minutes into a stream and I just noticed that? It's been a morning. So anyway, so yeah, long term, you look at fixing the balance in your tank and everything gets quite a lot better. Which, yeah, congrats, Redfish Bluefish hit 1,000 subscribers. That's pretty great. Pretty great. Now the hard part is getting all the watch time, as far as like being monetized on YouTube, and then you can make your sweet like $2 a video like I do. Most of us don't do this for money. Let's be honest. It's a nice dream though. I have one of my New Year's resolutions. I wouldn't call it a resolution because it's just a thing that I plan on doing, is like cutting soda out of my. I don't drink coffee. I very rarely drink tea. But, like, I have a bad soda habit. I love soda. And I try to keep it out of my house, but it ends up here anyway, because sometimes I just need caffeine in some way, shape, or form. So I'm trying to, like, no soda amongst a couple other things in 2020. So this is kind of like my last dash, so to speak. But, yeah. I hope everybody has something that they aspire to do. Like, I've got a ton of stuff as far as, like, channel-related and work related and life related, but So like an example, life related, but still channel related. Like I want to try to go to at least one convention this year that is not in Washington. So the actual travel. I'm looking, there's like two different things I'm looking at doing, and I might do both if I can make my budget work, which is there's the Rainbow Fish Convention that's out in Canada this year. It's in Toronto. Specifically, it's in Burlington, Ontario, which is like I think 30 minutes or 40 minutes from Toronto. But that's gonna be tiny like AGA was, and it'd be just full of fish nerds, mostly rainbow fish nerds. But like Gary Lang's gonna be there, and a bunch of other like super awesome international rainbow fish people. And yes, Anthony, the caffeine headache will suck. I know. So like I'll probably drink more tea for a little while and kind of gauge the caffeine out of my system a little slowly, but it helps that it's the terrible time of the year when I actually like tea, when it's meh and cold outside. But yeah, so Chicago candy, Chicago Aquashella is the other one that's at the top of my list. I've had a lot of people who have been asking me to go to either Aquatic Experience or Aquashella in Chicago, not Dallas, even though they're trying really hard to make the Dallas one really good because the venue was not big enough last year, and there's been lots of complaints about that. But I'm looking to probably do one of the two, maybe both. And they're spaced out enough, so like the Rainbow Fish Convention is in May, and the Aquashella is in Chicago is what, like November or October. So they're far enough apart to where it's not problematic with my work. Like scheduling time off for stuff like that is quite the fight at my work. Like I worked all this week of Christmas. There's no Aquatic Experience. Wow. Color me surprised. I mean, that's a trade show, and Aquashella is a little more person-oriented. I think my problem that I have been having, and then I will get to this Bozeman question, and there was another one I needed to answer from Paul, too. My problem with Aquashella is their VIP pass is all about meeting YouTubers, but there's no pass if you are a YouTuber. So it's one of those things where like I even needled him on their Facebook group. I was like, so I buy the VIP pass to meet myself? That doesn't sound very interesting to me. Where's the one for a YouTuber? There's no response to that. I'm assuming by YouTuber they mean all the big boys like Corey and, not some little schleb in Seattle like me. I had to get my grilling in when I can. And I've met like George, so Coralfish 12G, and Sean Hale in person. They're super nice guys. But yeah, so we'll see. I'm gonna try to do at least one, hopefully both. I think like the Rainbow Fish one is the one that speaks to me the most, but I know that Aquashella is probably the one that, from an audience perspective, is more interesting because it's an opportunity to meet a lot of you folks in person. There are a lot of you who go to that event because Chicago is kind of an easy hub for a lot of people on the East Coast and Midwest to make it to, where the West Coast gets nothing. So there's that. So we'll take a couple questions. And again, for questions, if you at Bentley Pasco, just like how Candy is done talking about Aquashella, it's much easier for me to see. It grabs my attention really fast because it highlights it in bright orange. And that's more likely to get that question answered because I might, miss without that, where I won't miss it if you do put that in there. So, excuse me. Paul, Bentley, do you feed your rainbow fish live shrimp? Do you raise your own shrimp for food? So if you mean like Neocaridina shrimp, no, not at all. If you mean like fairy shrimp or some of the other small live shrimps, no. I only do brine shrimp, which I do raise brine from eggs pretty regularly. Right now I haven't been, but I need to get back to doing it just to be prepped for baby rainbow fish, and I need to get my guppy population better than it is. I've seen some what is probably the big fish getting more food than and the little fish not getting as much, despite me trying to put good amounts of very powdery food in there. So like my population's not as high as I want it to be right now. That's just little things I need to fix on my end. But I need to go back to like basically live daily brine for almost all my tanks. Plus, it's just really healthy for your fish. Like live food's so good. But other than brine, no, I don't do any other type of shrimp culturing of any form. I'm trying to get better at Daphnia, although I've been doing terribly at it. And I do vinegar eels. But eventually, whenever I have better space, I will be doing like an indoor Daphnia cultivation pond, so that I constantly have really good live food for my juvenile and larger fish. So just microcrustaceans, super healthy. Ookie. So I hope that answers your question, Paul. Amanda. Okay, so one female Bosemani has a sunken belly and is a bit off on color. Any suggestions on how to help her? So, man, when you get to the sunken belly part, I have historically had issues recovering rainbows when it looks really sunk in. Now, if it's just barely getting to that point, you can. Here's the thing, is like with rainbows, because they're a broad body fish, in the sense of they're kind of wide, by the time you see them kind of sunk in the belly, usually they haven't eaten for so long that their stomach and stuff has shrunk down so much that they struggle to basically get further food into their system. They're at a point where it's really bad. Now, usually, this is one of two things. It's some kind of internal parasite or worm, or a bacteria issue. Most commonly, it is an internal parasite. And because we cannot get them, we're struggling to get them to eat, we have to use water column antiparasites. So this is things like General Cure, levamisole, if it's a worm. So one of the things you would really want to do, because this is probably the most common thing I've seen lately, is for the Calamanus worms, is you'll have to watch your fish when the female is sitting still and look at her anus and see if like little, what looks like red worms are coming out. And if you see that and the second the fish moves, they go away, that's Calamanus worms. And the only way to really effectively treat that is levamisole. Now, levamisole is not normally easy to get, but thankfully Greg Sage at Select Aquatics, which is just selectaquatics.com if I remember correctly, has a really good distributor and has made it very easy for people. He ships it with great instructions. He's super responsive to email, super helpful on exactly how to dose your tank and how to take care of it. He has very good instructions on how to use levamisole. So it's very, very safe. I've used it in the past. I have not had issues with shrimp or snails personally, but you can't guarantee those things with any of those kind of medications. General Cure for some of the lighter parasites is very effective. There's several other antiparasitics that are out there. Some of them are unsafe for shrimp. So like some of the copper-based stuff, of course, is really bad, like cupramine type things. And that's not necessarily an antiparasitic, but there are some that have copper in them. There's also, was it triple sulfa? It's one of the sulfate-based medicines that's used for antiparasitics that is real bad for snails and can be very bad for shrimp. So just be aware. Those are some of your options. If you've tried General Cure or praziquantel, so like Prazipro, it's a liquid bottle you can buy. And I think Fritz makes something else that's a really good, like general anti-parasite medicine. And Candy's probably a little more familiar with them just from like Aquarium Co-op Selection, for example. But those are your best bets. Now, if it's bacterial, usually you see some kind of other issue happening on top of the sunken belly, like they'll bloat in one way or another, or you'll see some kind of white stuff around the mouth or around fins. Some other visual indicator that when it's bacteria, almost always when you get the sunken belly, it's a parasite or some kind of internal worm. What you'll want to do is make sure that if you have a 10-gallon tank, to move that fish and treat that fish on its own separately. Don't treat the whole tank if you can, because if it is a parasite, if that fish doesn't recover and it dies, that parasite will leave that host and go into the water column and find another host. So if you split them, you have a significantly better chance of preventing the parasite from ever affecting anything else in your tank. So I know that's a really long answer, but I hope it helps. Typically, when you are seeing the sunken belly, means they're not eating. And the reason why they've stopped eating is that they stopped getting enough nutrition because of some kind of internal parasite or worm taking all that food from them as they were eating in the first place. And their stomachs will get so small that they can never eat again. And it's really unfortunate. I've had that with some of my rainbows, and like I'm pretty good with my fish meds, and sometimes you just can't stop it if you catch it too late. Or you didn't see the signs of them not eating early enough. And it sucks. It really sucks. But yeah, I would definitely separate the fish and try to treat. One of the easiest you can probably find at most local fish stores is going to be either General Cure or praziquantel, which is Prazi Pro. The harder stuff is going to be like something like levamisole, but you only need levamisole in the case that it is a worm. So just be prepared for that, because that's a dewormer. There's other dewormers you can use too if you find out it's a worm. That you don't necessarily have to get levamisole, but levamisole is just like, it's so good. It's so effective. You can use like dog dewormers. There's Panicure C, which is pretty easy to dose, but yeah, I would do that way. Empty fish tanks, like, casual shout out to a guy whose channel is just like absolutely blown up and is fantastic. But what chances of me breaking up the mixing decks is Oakley sunglasses? I never wore Oakleys. I wore Ray-Bans, sir. How dare you? Actually, I just never like the look of, like, you can even tell by my actual glasses, like the way Oakleys are designed are just never something I never liked. I like super light frame glasses, and I always thought that Oakleys were chunky and ugly. But I wore like really simple sunglasses when I wore them, and typically only when I played baseball, because otherwise I didn't start wearing glasses until my 20s. Because that's when my eyes were like, oh yeah, your parents' genetics where you have great vision as a kid, but then they fall apart when you hit like 22. That just happened. Congratulations. Like, excuse me, I didn't mute that in time. That was coming up when I wanted to or not. But as far as my mixing deck and turntables, I no longer have 90% of that equipment. I have a turntable remaining, and I don't have a mixing deck. But eventually, for the whole YouTube thing, I will need an audio mixer of forms for like some of the better microphones long term, and then maybe we'll do something fun. Realistically, what is more likely to happen is I have a buddy who makes, which, like, I'm going to shout his channel out just because he's super awesome, but he's a friend of mine who used to actually work for me. So when I worked for Oculus, which is the VR gaming stuff, right? The guy who this channel is, which is Technomage, is his channel and his musical name, but the gentleman's name is Dan. He used to work for me as a junior tester. I was his boss. And he makes this like really cool, if you're a video game person, he makes what's a chiptune style fusion, like metal inspired chiptune music. It's really sweet. It's really, really sweet. And I might at some point work with him to get some like custom music, or just get permission to use his music, because I really like what he does. It's a lot of like really up-tempo stuff, so it might not be great for like B-roll type stuff, but his music's really sweet. If you just want to, if you're into video gamey type music, that chiptune kind of like 16, 18-bitty sound, or some kind of like almost 80s synth sound, he's does some really cool stuff. He doesn't have a lot out yet, but he's got that if you just want to listen to it on YouTube. If you want to actually pick it up, like I've got it all on my phone. Very often I will put my phone to his music in traffic that I've downloaded off of Bandcamp and just listen to it on loop while I'm like going 5 miles an hour in traffic and watching my gas tank just chew through gas in my stupid V8 Mustang. But the music's good, so it makes traffic a lot better. But yeah, as far as like actually putting music on stream of my own work, probably not anytime soon. Plus, everything I made was mixing actual commercial music, so that causes all sorts of demonetization issues. So Tiffany, let me answer your question real fast. 4 males, 8 females, good ratio for frickatas and a 55. Yes. Anytime you can do at least 1 female, preferably 2 per male, with any kind of rainbow, you're doing great. So if you have 8 females and 4 males, you are spot on perfect, as far as I'm concerned, for almost every rainbow. It's basically true with the pseudomagills, as it is with the Melanitania, the Glossolepis, all the big boys. So having more females will get you better color, better displays, more courting, more breeding, everything you ever want. More females will do that for you. And then you could also do it's like 2 males for every 3 females is the other way to go about that route. But you already have 4 male to 8 female. You're perfect. You are absolutely perfect. Yeah, I haven't had... I'm trying to think. The last time I owned a pair of like name brand sunglasses, I was in high school, like my last year of playing baseball before several leg injuries that I had. And yeah, I had a pair of fairly nice Ray-Bans that I'd been using since like middle school, solely for playing baseball in the summer, so that if I had any pop flies or anything, I didn't lose them in the sun. But other than that, like I used to have, for my old pair of glasses, I had these like nice magnetized clip-on, sunglasses that went over the top of my glasses. I need to get something new for these, because next summer I don't need to like have my eyes straining like crazy. They're bad enough as is, looking into the sun with these poor little blue eyes that don't do well in bright light, like the Gremlins movies, Mogwai. Bright light, bright light. Excuse me a moment. Healthy. Oh man, I'm gonna be so thrilled when whatever is left in my chest is out and gone, and I'm not like just hacking and coughing randomly. Cichlids 23. So I played baseball for 12 years, and I also played softball in a co-ed softball league. So in baseball, my favorite position is third base. As I got older, I've played catcher, I've pitched. I was not a fastball type pitcher, I was a control-oriented pitcher. So, like, when I was a kid, when a lot of the guys my age were throwing at, 65 to 70 miles an hour, I was throwing in the, high 50s. So, I did not throw very fast. Because... despite being a big guy, it was just not the way that my arm motion worked. I threw really weird. So I didn't have a lot of speed, but I had really good control. And then I've played first base, and then I've played outfield, which I hate the outfield, despite the fact that, and Little League was really common. They were like, yeah, send the chunky kid out in the outfield. And I'm like, the place where I have to run the most? What the hell are you doing? My favorite position, though, is by far third base. Third base is... lots of action. You have to have really fast reaction time, which thankfully I've always had pretty good reaction time, and my hands have always been pretty fast, so that has been nice. But I'm one of those people, I have always been a big guy. I have never been a fast runner, despite being fairly muscular in my legs, and I'm not fast. So I was I would hit a ball all the way to the fence, and I'd get a double out of it. Or a single. And I was not I was never a home run hitter. I was a very line drive oriented hitter, very contact oriented. So, long term, it's not like it was ever going to make me a college athlete or anything. I just love baseball as a kid. So, yeah. There's that. All right. So that being said, a lot of people who are like, yeah, I don't like branded sunglasses either. I'm cheap is really what it comes down to. When it comes to things like that, I just want function over form. And a name brand doesn't matter anything to me if something that is significantly more effective costs less because it doesn't have the name brand. I will take the thing that doesn't have the name brand because it works better. And nowadays I wear prescription eyewear. It's more about having something that works with my prescription eyewear because I need it to drive because I'm nearsighted. So like I can read things without my glasses on up close, but anything far away is just like fuzzy and illegible. It's like, yeah, that's a splotch of color that looks roughly like a red car. Or is that a stop sign? That's a stop sign. It's not that bad, but I could in theory drive off of objects and shapes and I can still see lanes without my glasses, but I can't read a sign. And for the legal purposes of driving, you have to be able to read. So, yeah. gotta wear the old spectacles. I love the number of like highs in chat. Like when I'm in chat, I do the same thing. When somebody new shows up, you're saying hi to them, and especially if it's somebody that you talk to regularly. I love that kind of stuff. But sometimes it's always amusing to me. Like look at chat and just there's this barrage of hellos between folks, and I was like, oh, is there a question somewhere for me? For this guy. Oh man. Pam, are you on the road yet? That people want to know. And by the way, KP, thank you very much. Really appreciate the super chat. It's totally unnecessary, but you've been commenting a lot lately, which I greatly appreciate. That's surprisingly, like, I know a lot of YouTubers, sometimes when you get, like, the channels get bigger, they struggle to keep with comments. Keeping up with comments is, like, one of my favorite things about YouTube. Because I love that kind of interaction between people. And sometimes it's just reading comment and like giving it a heart, but like there's been plenty where if there's a good question that needs an answer, I do my best to answer them and stuff like that. It's like probably my favorite part. It's why I try letting folks like you guys drive some of the stuff that I do, because that's the part of it that I love the most. Found somewhere to sell your excess shrimp. What kind of shrimp we got? I'm surprised that like you can't. It took you a while to find like a good place to sell shrimp, because like at least out here, shrimp sell almost as fast as they come in the door, and to get them locally bred is a struggle because the breeders usually can't keep up with like, especially for like places like the Co-op with how many people go there. But £1 for 3 shrimp? That seems like it's reasonable. I'm not sure. Like, I know out here, cherry shrimp and stuff are typically like $1 a pop. As far as like, if I were to take cherry shrimp in or blue shrimp in, I would get something like $1 a piece in store credit, which is not cash. But hey, store credit's good because fish food matters. Also from Paul, do I plan on selling my rainbows that I'm breeding from Gary Lang? Eventually. So here's the problem. The biggest problem for me is shipping fish. And I've actually had some talks with Bob Steenfott trying to figure out, based on his space, to get him to ship some of my fish, and just basically giving him a small cut for his work, but also not like, I wouldn't sell to him at like a wholesale price, because the raising or advertising or however you want to put it of those things and just sending customers his way because it's hard for me to ship has an inherent value to it. Otherwise, it's like I take a day off of work to ship, and it typically takes me and the last time I shipped, I was in my fish room at 4:30 in the morning starting to catch and bag fish, and I got to the post office at 12:30, so just after noon. So it took me like 8 hours just to get everything packaged and ready for the orders I did that day. And I'm definitely not like Dan's Fish or something like that, who like is got a system down and really knows what they're doing. to make it more efficient. Like, I'm not that guy at all. So there's problems in that. Like, my work schedule makes shipping fish very hard. I go into work before the post office opens. I leave work after the post office closes. So there's that problem. I don't like leaving fish in a car. I cannot take them into my work because my work is in a cold lab, and the temperature in my lab is basically like 50 degrees at almost all times. So it's too cold, even with an insulated box, for me to feel safe about it. And there's all sorts of other things where, like, you know, I'd have to do some accounting, or more importantly, like, bringing a bunch of water in a lab full of technology is something my bosses are like, no. I'm like, just no. I don't care if it's in boxes. And leaving it in my car, like, there's other risks and blah, 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 blah. Basically what I'm saying is, it's really hard for me to ship. So I want to eventually do it, but the thing that I'm trying to figure out to make it more efficient is how I can find someone I trust to ship them. And there might be a different option on the table. I can't be for certain or talk about that yet until certain things happen, but I've had some conversations with some folks who are trying to do some, like, cool stuff in the future that might be an option. So long term, yes. Short term, no. I have to get more space for breeding them more efficiently as well. And then you know, you're looking at 9 months of raising the fish before they're at what I consider a sellable size, where they have good color and are easily sexable by someone who isn't a psychotic rainbow fish person like me. You know, a hobbyist can more easily identify them who might not be as experienced. Yeah, rainbow fish is like the worst way to, like, try and make money. They're not a profit source, but getting good rainbows out to more people is something that I want to do, just because I love rainbow fish and I want more people to love rainbow fish. That's really what it comes down to. I did not get into breeding rainbows because I thought, like, I can retire raising rainbow fish. Heck no. If you want to do that, like, guppies and bettas are far more efficient at, or shrimp, at making money. You know, rainbow fish take forever. They're very expensive to raise, and they, in the grand scheme of things, do not sell for that much money compared to how much they cost to raise. So there's that. Do I want to ship them? Yes. Am I? Not right now. Short version. Julie Canton asked, what brand of brine shrimp eggs do you recommend? I just get the highest grade from Brine Shrimp Direct, which I get them in a big, like, can. It looks like a large tin of canned food, because I just go through that many, but Brine Shrimp Direct is, like, the best place, and you just look for their brand and their highest yield. It's great. And I would argue, if you really wanted to do, if you were trying to make a profit and you were doing it reliably, plants is probably actually easier to make money off of than livestock, and you can do plants and shrimp at the same time. And those, they go together very, very well, and they make money fairly well. Yeah, Frank is literally calling the Rainbow Fish Convention I was talking about. So that's the DRAS Rainbow Fish Convention in Burlington, Ontario, Canada in May 2020. It's actually a place, Frank, that is actually something I'm looking at. Also because I've had Gary scream at me that I should go. So, you know, there's that. So, Krager's Fish, I'll get yours in a sec. I need to scroll up. There's one question I haven't answered yet that I want to answer. And then I will get to those. Okay, so from Almost On, about when are Praycock's rainbow fry big enough to eat vinegar eels? And then when to start baby brine shrimp. So, Praycock's rainbows can eat vinegar eels as soon as they hatch. Pretty much all of the big rainbows, Melanitania, Glossolepis, Chilatherina, vinegar eels are so small that they can eat them right away. Now, if you're really worried about it, I would say a week if you want to be more paranoid about it, but truly they can eat them right after hatch. And then typically you will move to baby brine shrimp between 2 weeks and a month. Month if you want to be very, very safe. If you are getting them as soon as they hatch, when they're like the smallest, typically 2 to 3 weeks is enough. It depends on kind of how much you've been feeding, how fast they've grown. Month is the safe point. But if you've been feeding 3 or 4 times a day, or you have a continuous food source like green water, they're going to grow quite a lot faster, and typically 2 or 3 weeks is good for baby brine shrimp. If you're feeding powdered food twice a day, wait a month. So hope that helps. That's about the system I use. Long term, there was a kind of comment about trying to inadvertently make green water using my day sim setting on the Fluval, which if that works for you, please let me know, because if you can make green water using that, I'd like to know your process, because then I'll do it myself, because I need a good process for making green water long term, because that will give me the ability to raise more rainbows, because green water is amazing for freshly hatched rainbow fry as far as a food source. Mike, I'll answer how to do that shortly. There's another question I need to get to first, but we'll get there. Excuse me. So from Sylvain, hi Bentley, do you think that a Fluval Nano 3.0 is enough for medium light in a 17 gallon? So 24 by 12 by 14 and a half. If you can raise it enough, yes. You might need a strip light instead, just to cover it far enough, because that nano plant light only covers so far out as far as left to right around it. Typically it's better for like the smaller cubes or something. Like, it does work well on the Flex 15, which is technically only 13 gallons of water and has some weird dimensions. I've seen people replace the typical canopy LED in the top with a Fluval Nano, and it's worked very well. So I think you could do it, especially if you need the stuff that needs higher light in the center, and you put the things that need less light, like your Anubias or whatever, toward the edges of the tank, you'd probably be okay. Okay, so Krager's Fish. Bentley, I bought a water sprite from the co-op and had it in my water. It is melting. Lower part of the plant is doing well with new growth. Upper part is struggling. Any pruning advice? So you might still have a little left over that is still trying to convert. Co-op does their best to convert as much as possible, but it depends on how much product sells. They do hold stuff if it hasn't converted enough. So if your new growth is looking healthy, what I would just do is go as close to the substrate as you can on each of those branches, however you want to call them, because they don't grow like a typical stem, right, with water sprite. And just prune those away and let that new growth take over and remove all that old growth. That would I personally grow mine floating because I'm lazy, and I've had more trouble planting it in the ground than ever having it up floating. Plus, it makes like really awesome kind of pseudo natural spawning mops. But that would be my advice: is just let that new growth take over, chop all that old growth away. The new growth will grow out, and you'll be fine in a couple weeks to a month. Depends on how much nitrate that thing is sucking up. But as long as you have good new growth, that's all that matters. The rest of the plant will do fine. It's either converting or it's used to slightly higher nitrates, and it's pushing all of the nutrients it's getting toward the newest growth and sucking away the old growth and kind of leaching what it can out of it as it dies and withers. So, hope that one helps you there, Mr. Krager. So, Mike, the only way you're going to the Rainbow Convention... The Rainbow Convention... Ike in English. Good Lord. So I want to bring back fish to the U.S. legally and how to figure out how. So when you go across the border, you need the scientific name of the fish. You just need it clearly identified. You need a receipt that identifies where you bought them and what their name is. So in theory, the convention will do this really well, I hope. Hear my girlfriend snoring. Hi, dear. She just woke up. I don't know if they hear it on mic, but if they do, it's funny to me. She didn't sleep very well last night. So she's a very sleepy bear. Anyway, so In the case of all the billions of unnamed fish, uh, the problem that you have is that the scientific name is typically something like Melanitania species X. So at that point, what you need to know is the catch location. You need to know the country of origin. That's how you would deal with getting them across the border. If I go to the Rainbow Fish Convention, I won't be taking any fish home because I will purposely just contact Gary later because I don't want to deal with the border. However, a lot of that is just because I then have to fly across country all the way to Seattle. If I was only in, say, like New York or a drivable distance, I would take fish home. But I don't like it. Taking fish on the plane isn't something I want to experience quite yet. I'll save that for another day, especially with rainbows because I'm such a finicky butt about those things. But it's usually easy to take fish across the border as long as you know the scientific names. It is hard to take plants. Plants is very, very difficult to go between the U.S. and Canada. Canada is really, really stringent about that stuff. And when you're coming from Canada to the U.S., they're extremely stringent about it as well. So as long as you're not doing plants, it's way easier. Basically, you just need the scientific name to the best of what it is. So if it hasn't been fully identified, you would have, this is a Melanitania species X, so if it's a fasciata or whatever, but we don't know the full, we haven't done the full scientific identification yet, you would have Melanitania species, you know, trifasciata or Chilathrina fasciata or whatever it is, caught from, and then the catch location. And you would, you know, it would be like Calibiru, West Papua, or something like that, right? That's usually enough information to get them through customs. Usually. The better the identification, the easier it is to get them through. Sometimes you'll have to wait, so just make sure that you have, you know, a styrofoam lined box and some like 72-hour heat packs, or you've set yourself up with a system with air, or however you're going to do it. Just make sure that you have it to deal with the time. The time probably matters more than getting them across the border. So hopefully that helps. To do a little bit of talk about doing green water. Accidentally breeding mosquito larvae. Yeah, that happens, especially out here. Mosquito larvae is a thing. It's Buffalo Row. We have one of those football tanks like the one behind you. Do you know of any way to rig it on a timer? Ours defaults to off with a smart plug. No. The unfortunate part is, no, I don't. I've just gotten used to turning it on and off, or in this case, leaving it off for way longer than I'm supposed to, until I realized it half an hour into a stream, like I did 45 minutes ago with this tank. It's unfortunately, with the way that they remote control those, and it doesn't have a program of some form, it's not like the Fluval, where the plant LED, the big boy, where you can kind of trick it into just turning on whenever it receives power. That light, as you said, defaults off. There might be somebody who's figured out a way to do it, but I haven't. And I haven't cared to play with it enough, because it's literally, as I'm walking out every day to work, on my way out of my room, I turn that light on. My lady feeds the fish at some point in the day, and then I come home and turn it off. It's pretty simple. But it's also a tank full of like crypts and fish that don't need very much, so I keep it as low maintenance as possible because of that. So I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer for you, but it's my answer for you. All right, we're quiet. I want to show, we got a little lull with questions, so I want to show you guys something that the Brightwater folks gave me last night, and talk about why I'm excited to test a bunch of their stuff. And I know that, like, this is not me trying to sell you on things yet. I say yet just because I haven't tested it enough to be like, this stuff's really incredible, versus like, so far my base testing, I've been pretty impressed, but like scientifically speaking, I don't have full proof yet. It's coming, but they gave me some cool stuff. So other than media, they gave me this thing. I'm going to pull it out of its package because they told me some cool stuff about this. And they had these at a swap meet where I first met the rep before meeting the founder. And I was kind of impressed with them, but I didn't want to take one for free, even though they offered me one, because it is a little expensive for what I would ever want to accept. And there are other people who could use them better who are getting the samples, so I let them go to those folks. Like there's a gentleman who runs a fish rescue out in the other side of the state, which is Washington Fish Rescues. It's just his name. It's in Wenatchee, or actually it's in Leavenworth, Washington. So he's running a rescue out of his own dime, so I kind of was like, yeah, that guy should take it instead of me. So they have this little shrimp net. Ooh. Now, what is cool about this thing, and what is not cool? There's some not cool too, but it's got a little twist, but it's telescoping like your typical. But this part here, do you hear this? It's not metal. It's carbon fiber. This thing is carbon freaking fiber. It's designed the same way carbon fiber fishing rods are. So it's like crazy durable. Now the problem they've been having with this thing, and they gave me one last night because they just wanted me to try it and give them feedback, is they've gotten feedback on this part because they've sold some of these. They were basically a demo product to see how people liked them, and they sold some on Amazon. This is kind of soft, and you can see I can really easily bend it. So this is great for like low payloads like shrimp or catching some floating debris or whatever, but not great for like a heavier fish. And you can see like the basket's not all that big. You can compare that to my hand, right? Not huge. It's a good little shrimp net. I like that it's pretty open. But, all right, why am I talking about this? It's not the item that's cool, although it is neat that it's carbon fiber. It's built to basically last for an eternity instead of the cheap aluminum ones. They care about feedback a lot. So much so that this is getting changed. So this head here is not removable right now. It just telescopes, right? But they're going to change it so you can remove the head and replace it with a scrubber, a net, and several other attachments so that you have one carbon fiber rod that lasts forever, and you have different attachable heads that will let you do different functions. And then they're changing this border here so that you can make bigger or smaller nets, but also to be more durable so that it doesn't soft flex. So that they might have to like full carbon fiber in here. I'm not sure. But so that concept is interesting. The part that matters to me, I'll throw this back in the bag, is that they listen to feedback and they're changing their product within like 6 months. So the part that intrigues me about this company, because like in fish, which, okay, wow, Buffalo Road, thank you very much, man. You're such a stud. To 2020, we'll do some crazier stuff, I assure you. But what's interesting to me is that I sat talking to them for 3.5 hours. Basically, Starbucks kicked us out because they were closing. And they'd let us stay past their close a little bit. And they're like, "Hey guys, you need to go." We're like, "So sorry, we're finishing up. We're so sorry." And they're like, eventually we're like, "Okay, we actually have to kick you out. You have to." We're like, "Yeah, well, we're sorry. We were literally picking all our stuff up as they did it, but we got kicked out of Starbucks because we were there too long." So, what's cool is they listen to feedback, and their thing is that the founder of Brightwater, is a hobbyist first, and she cares about making the thing that she dislikes about the industry is that most of the products out there that are the best are like 75% of what we want in a product and 25% flaws. Well, she wants to find something that's 99%. She wants to find that thing that is durable, exceptional, but also cost effective enough given the quality. And if they get feedback, they want to change products. So, like, some of the stuff that we talked about while I was there involved direct feedback on some of their products. As far as, for me specifically, it was talking about what the industry is doing, in my opinion, wrong. So, an example. We have lots of places that have these big, huge companies. Pick a manufacturer, right? Most of them manufacture their stuff in China. They're typically engineered somewhere else, but they're manufactured in China. And they're done to be as cost effective as possible. They're built for the highest profit, and as long as they last 3 years and then people have to replace them, perfect. They design stuff to be replaceable, to get as much money. Like, I'll think about all those filters that have those dumb cartridge systems in them that they want you to replace every month or every 2 months. Brightwater wants to build something you buy once and it lasts you at least 5, preferably 10 years or more. Because they don't want to build that thing that you buy over and over and over again. They want to buy that thing that for every tank you buy once, but you want to put it on every tank. So they pay attention to all the feedback so that they can make their products better. And in the case of, like, your foam sponge material, you know, one of the feedbacks that they've looked at is like, hey, can we get a larger sponge? That's when they started bringing those big blocks I talked to you about, or a more coarse, because that is 20 ppi versus the small stuff is 60 ppi. Things like that. And like most of us experienced hobbyists, we don't use any of that garbage. But the Joe Aquarius, the person who maybe doesn't watch YouTube, is just getting into a fish tank, like, they've done all this crazy market research. And so 70% of the market is people who are just trying their first fish tanks. And really only 30% of it is experienced hobbyists who have, you know, more than one tank or have been doing it for more than a year or two. So, like, they've done all this research, but the problem is breaking in is really, really hard. So they've been looking, one of the things they talked to me about was, like, how do we start really small, grassroots? We don't want to, like, we don't ever want to get to a point, because, like, they've tried talking to bigger influencers, and almost all of them are like, well, you pay me X, I'll make a video, and it goes out. And it's all in a very small window. That's not what they want. They came to me after talking to me enough because of my professional background. So one of the guys, the distributor that I talked to at first, a gentleman named Tony, he used to work for Microsoft building mice and keyboards and hardware. He was on the team that, if you ever did, like, all the Sidewinder peripherals, he was on that team. Well, I do test for a living. I'm a software and hardware test engineer. So my job is literally to try and break stuff, right? Well, I approached that with aquatics. You guys have seen, like, how I test things. I'll take months. And he was like, the founder, the funny story of all this. And there is a question to answer, which I'll get to very shortly. The founder apparently had been harping on, because they're friends, had been harping on him because he was really talking up a big game with me after we talked at this little swap meet locally. And, you know, it took 4 months for me to put a video out because I was testing the product the whole time, right? And she was like, I don't think he's going to do a video. He might have just said he was going to and then forgot, like, you know, other people we tried to do stuff with. And then my video finally came out, like, two weeks or so before we met with him. And So we're talking. I was trying to tell him some stuff about like one of the best ways to show the value in your product. She's asleep again. Anyway, is to just show raw testing data. Like show if you've tested biocapacity versus your competition, show it. Just show it. That's what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna do it where it's all out of my own dime, basically. And they wrote lots of notes and took a lot of my feedback, and then kind of told me like, hey, they told me the story about the shrimp net, right? As I'm dubbing it, the shrimp net, and about how they're changing it based on feedback they got. And that got me excited, because any company that wants to listen to that much feedback and make change in a 6-month window, literally re-engineer an entire product with their engineering team to make it better for us, so that it's like the one solution you go to. That makes me excited. Now, the question is, can they long-term survive? Because this industry is really tough to break into, because you have all these multi-billion-dollar companies that have like 12 employees and work very simply. And they have years and years of brand recognition, and mostly because they make good products. New Life Spectrum, for example, makes really good food. They've done it for an eternity. Getting them to change is probably impossible. Things like that. Fluval has made great products for a long time because they're part of Hagen, and Hagen has done the same thing. Tough to do. So it's tough to break in. But I'd be really curious to see. I'm going to test and play with a bunch of their products just because that's what I do. That's what I like having fun with. And they're really excited to like have somebody who does this professionally test their products, collect a lot of data, and put it forward without any bias, because they're not paying me in any way, shape, or form. They have provided me with products to test, but solely for the purpose so that I can test whatever I want that they make, which is kind of cool. And then, they even offered to buy, one of the things they did offer last night was that they would provide me with competitors' products so that all of the product was free. And I was like, don't worry about that, because then there's worry that like there's influence because they bought the competitor product. But it's all like stuff on Amazon. So random stuff. Let me get to a couple questions so that I'm not boring you about like what excites me about a random company making products that happens to be in my backyard. Because it's kind of just coincidence that they're in my backyard, but it's exciting to me. Well, let's see here. Aha, okay, so Green Ranger. How would you dose Ferts to a 125? Schedule and amount. I have Easy Green and Easy Iron, just not sure how much and how often I would dose. Okay, so. Sorry, I just saw Alex's comment. I'll get to that in a second, buddy. So I have a similar type tank, which is my big rainbow tank. And it first depends on how much planting you've done, okay? If you have it fairly densely planted or just lots of fast-growing plants, you will want to dose more than once a week with Easy Green. What I like to do, actually, with a larger system or a more densely planted system, is I like dosing a small amount every day. So if we'll take my slightly gunky bottle of Easy Green. Please ignore the ugly part. Ignore the ugly part. There we go. Marketing, right? So if this wants, 1 pump every 10 gallons once a week, and I've got 125 gallons. So let's just round up or down, you pick. We'll just round down to be simple to 12, right? So I'm going to do 12 pumps once a week, and that's going to cover my tank. So instead what I would do is over 7 days, I would do 2 pumps a day. Now that equates to 14 pumps the entire week. But because it's a slow, continuous amount of nutrients, and do it for both, iron and green, if you got a good amount of red in there, that will give you a continuous amount of nutrients in the water. So your plants will always be able to find nutrients. The only problem, and this doesn't happen as often in like low-tech setups. With doing a once-a-week dose or even a twice-a-week dose, is after a certain number of days, the plants will have absorbed everything and they won't have anything to get. And that can long-term impact how fast certain plants spread. Crips are a great example of this. But if you do a small microdose basically every day, there's always just a low-level amount of nitrate in the water. And the goal is to get yourself like between 10 and 20 on the like nitrate scale, parts per million, in your water. So if you did a nitrate test, and always have your water at that condition. And if you can do that, you basically just have this really, really good environments for plants to continually do their thing and grow and have good color and propagate well, all that kind of stuff. So in your case, try 2 pumps a day. Now, if that's a little too much work, so I don't want to put stuff in the water every day. Okay, do twice a week. And what I would do is, instead of exactly half of what you would do something like 8 pumps on the first day, and then 3 to 4 days later. So like my example is, I used to do, when I did two-time dosing, I would dose on Sunday and Wednesday. And then, because I do all my water changes Saturday. So I'd have fresh doses Sunday morning, and then Wednesday would run until Saturday, and then water change. Right, I did weekly water changes of 50%. So I would dose like 8 pumps twice a week. If you can, though, 2 pumps a day is going to be great. And then as those plants start growing taller and taller and you have more plant matter, up that just a little bit. So do it to like 3 pumps a day. And then after you do a big major trim, go back down to 2. It's kind of like fish. If you have more fish, you need slightly more food. You have less fish, in this case, our plant matter. If you have more plant matter, you need just slightly more food. When you have less plant matter, you need slightly less food. So at a base, you do 2 pumps a day. And when everything's starting to look a little overgrown, if you're not going to be trimming, or you want it really bushy and you got it really dense because you've done a lot of work to propagate plants, move to like 3 pumps a day and you'll be set. Hope that helps. But that's kind of how I like to approach ferts whenever I can, especially in bigger water systems. Smaller water systems, a couple of times, it's easy. But big water systems, a lot easier to do microdosing every day and just get better overall plant health. Rogue Aquarium's my buddy Darren, who, if you guys didn't subscribe to him or watch like his Instagram, he recently got his fish into that big 600-gallon aquarium that we did that little interview on, and soon coral. So check that out, because now that you get to see those fish in that big tank, I'm jealous, man. I want a tank that size one day to do rainbows, but it looks really nice. And your rock work was just phenomenal. I loved your rock work. I look forward to seeing all the coral in that bad boy, because quite nice. Quite nice. You've got really sweet coral to start with, so, that helps. KP saying that he appreciates my testing approach. Thanks, man. It's what I do for my career, so I like making sure that I take proper testing standards, because like a lot of people will say they test a product, but they're just using it for enough time, and you're not necessarily taking professional testing standards into effect. Where I do professional test work for a living, so I take those standards and apply them to my hobby very regularly. I like playing and fiddling around with gadgets and tech, so when I can, I will do them in my aquariums where possible. Which is part of why I'm doing Testing Lab, because it lets me present the way that I approach things very directly to folks like you, and be able to see it in person rather than just having me be like, well, here's the data. I'm like, no, I'm going to show you. I want you to see it. Because if you can see it, you know for certain that there's no BS, that it's real, right? Where if I just present you a table full of numbers, you can be like, well, how can we be certain? But if you can see it, that tells you everything, right? So Alex has said, Bentley, I professionally break a lot of fish gear, pass it on. Maybe, we'll see. This is my jam, man. No, they did actually ask me if there were people I wanted to suggest, but they wanted to wait a little bit. They're reconfiguring some stuff and like trying to get an Instagram going and some stuff like that. So It's one of those things where they're like changing some of their approaches to stuff, which instead of going to like big trade shows, they want to go to small events. So like the swap meet that we had up here and stuff, and just meet hobbyists in person and not like large companies. They want to meet just Joe Schmo aquarist and talk to them directly and give them samples. And one of the things, by the way, that they did okay, they're going to give me a bunch of samples to give away when we put out the video after I do all the ZIS testing, where it's the ZIS versus the ZIS with the X media in it, to compare the K1 media versus the X foam media. So that's kind of cool. It'll be an opportunity for you guys to get some of their sweet foam and try that out for yourselves. So I get to give away a bunch of stuff. If I can give stuff away rather than get stuff for free for myself, I have way more fun giving it away, because it lets more people try it. I'll take a scientific approach, but it's more fun to put it in the hands of like 6 different people and get 6 different opinions than just like one science nerd. Okay, Sharpies, models, and aquatics, my friend. Do they make a breeder box? It seems to me that the slits in the in-tank breeder boxes are far too wide and fry escape. Well, I mean, some of the breeder boxes are designed so that the fry can escape and that the parent is stuck, right? I think that's what they actually meant to design those for, and not to keep fry in them. The net box that was it Lee's that makes that? It's got the little like blue plastic frame, and then you put the net around it, the fine mesh net. That's more designed to hold fry in. But I can't remember if they make. Let me look. I don't think they do. Off the top of my head, I think they're just doing. They had the shrimp net, but other than that, it's just really media for right now that they're doing. But they are looking long term. If they can get the media business to be profitable, because they're a startup company, they're small, they're like 3 people, and it's really only like 1 full-time person. They need to get that kind of off the ground and working, and then once they do, they want to try and take the same methodology to other products, and that'll be exciting if that gets to that point, and I'll be around. But yeah, which, by the way, thank you for in chat. But if you're enjoying this, hit the like button. My random rambles about fish stuff. Also, while I am a day late, but I did say it on Facebook, the proper day. Happy birthday to Candy Overhauls. Yesterday I had a fantastic, 21st birthday? She's so young. But yeah, Candy's birthday was yesterday. Y'all should give a little love to Candy. Just saying. So, we have another question. I want to get to it. I want to get as many questions as I can before we get too crazy here. Does any company, this is from Mike, does any company make a big passive CO2 diffuser? I don't want a pop bottle in my tank. So, the only ones I've seen are ugly. I think some of the best ones are like there's like these big plastic basically pop bottles, but because they're not an actual pop bottle, you might be able to hide them. They're hideous. It's really hard to do a good one. I think the closest you're going to get, and it's technically active, is getting a ladder system, and those are still like big chunky things, but they slowly let the CO2 run up a ladder back and forth and dissolve slowly into the water system. I've just gone with more like atomic diffusers or inline diffusers because I similarly don't want a giant pop bottle in my tanks. Although if I was trying to do CO2 in lots of tanks, and I was caring more about function over form, which typically I do, I would probably take that route more often, but I just I put CO2 in like only a portion of my tanks because it's just simple. It's really what it comes down to. Also, it's better when you sell plants to be able to show folks that like, hey, XYZ works without CO2. Here's a tank that has no CO2 and it looks great. Because otherwise they assume that CO2 is the answer, and it's not the answer for everybody. Okay. So from G-Bear, I had Pinnatifida growing for almost a year with runner new plants growing on wood and rocks. Within a week, it all melted rapidly. Any ideas what happened? Within a week, that's really fast. So there's the only way that's going to happen is there's some massive shift in the nutrients or something in your tank. Maybe not enough iron. It is a little iron hungry. It's also, I remember right, it's a little calcium hungry. I have notes for plants that are like kind of all over the place, but that's not one of the ones that's on the top of my head because typically I've had pretty good luck with Pinnatifida. It's usually really bulletproof, but every once in a while you can have melt issues like that. And usually what that is telling you is there's some massive shift that's happened in your nutrients or some other spike. So like it is a little more finicky to certain pH swings. So if some kind of pH swing, like a crash happened, or some kind of like, if your water maybe is far more nutrient rich in the winter for some reason, like it's a well water or something like that, and it's going through more stuff, so it's picking up more random minerals. That hardness shift can cause problems in water changes. It doesn't happen with most plants, but it can happen with some. So that's, I know it's not like the answer you're looking for, but it's kind of the point. It's trying to point you in the right direction, which is like, just test your water a bunch and try to figure out, have you had a massive shift in your TDS? So that means like your mineral content has changed, or something similar to that. Geekalotl, your name always makes me smile. I love that name. What crypts do you enjoy or like to have in your tanks for profit? I very rarely sell crypts, and that's mostly because I love crypts so much that I'm greedy and want to keep them all. But were I trying to sell crypts for profit, the way that I would probably approach it is I would pick the things that are the most popular. So I would look at like red Wendetti eyes because red plants are hard for people, but crypts staying red is very simple. I would also look at something like the flamingo because it's kind of finicky. It's really popular with the people who are trying to do a little more advanced side of the hobby. And so you can cater to that by basically buying it in tissue culture, raising it up, keeping a couple, and selling the rest at a premium to where you've made a profit overall, and you're slowly keeping more and more plants to propagate off of yourself. Because they are kind of an expensive tissue culture, and it's really the only way to get them right now in any number without paying a arm and a leg for people that have actually grown them submerged. And you could also grow them immersed if you really wanted to like do immersed growth. The other type of plant that I would look at is any of the Nuriais. They've become super popular because they're really cool. And basic Nuriais is becoming more common, so it's not as sought after. But if you can get some of the stuff that's a little rarer, like Rosen Maiden or Rosen Maiden actually has like 5 different names. Like they'll call it like Nurii Pink. That's still Rosen Maiden. It's the same freaking plant. It's part of the problem of naming crypts is that they'll be named like 15 different names for the same stupid plant. Like there's Pink Panther out there, which is this exact same. It's a Wendetti species that has a recessive gene that's caused it to go pink, and the difference is just a different lab had a slightly different approach to get the exact same plant, the exact same recessive gene trait in their Wendetti eyes that caused them to go pink. There's also one of the other ones that I think is, if you can figure out how to grow it efficiently and fastly, the red tiger spiralis would actually be really, really good. I haven't cracked the code on getting it to propagate quickly. I can get it to get like huge and look great, but getting it to propagate is just like, no, I don't want to. Yeah, I'm just fine. Because that plant is really cool and very, very popular. So those are the ones that I would look at if I were you. But like, there's a big list from Alex here that are all pretty good. I would avoid Parva, personally. He suggests it because it's very popular. If I were going to go something smaller, I would look at, is it Lutea or Lucens? I think it's Lucens. The one that's only gets like yay tall. I would look at that instead, because that propagates quite a lot faster. Getting parvo to propagate is a very slow game. You are better off doing it in tissue culture where you can just clone them. There's Alex kind of teeing in a little bit on the Pinnatifida is also phosphorus is a potential because it regulates the metabolism. So that's something. And you could have temperature swifts too. I mean, there's lots of, it's basically just finding out what kind of change happened and addressing the change. I know it's a terrible answer, but it's really what it gets down to. From Water Wizard, any idea what could cause an S shape in Endlers? They look like an S when viewed from above. Yes. That is not enough calcium in their diet and not enough light, typically. One of the two. So usually, if your water is softer and you're feeding calcium, you need to buffer the water up in order to make sure that the water isn't acidified to the point of where it forces calcium to leach out of the body. As disturbing as that sounds, it can happen. Or more importantly, just feeding of calcium-enriched food of some form. Just making sure. So like the way that I get calcium into my guppies' diets is I feed live foods. I feed microcrustaceans to give them calcium. I don't get zigzags in the body, as I like to call them, whether it's the up and down or from the top. But it's all the same thing. It's all a calcium deficiency in the way they're growing. Sometimes bent spines happen because you don't give them enough light in the day. Now, if you've had your light on for 8 or more hours in a day, that's not the issue. It's purely diet. But if you're only having your light on for, like, say, 4 hours a day, you need to increase the amount of time your light's on. Because the light and getting basically some of the vitamins from, like, how we get vitamin D as humans, that light impacts how they grow, and if they're not getting enough light, they can get bent spines. Specifically in live bearers, most commonly guppies and endlers. So if that answers the question there. For you, a Water Wizard. So Guppy Guru is asking, what are my thoughts on dipping plants for parasite removal? Yeah. Whether you're using potassium permanganate or like a bleach solution where it's like 1 part bleach to 10 parts water. You can even do a little more than that. It depends on how you're doing it and what plant you're doing, or using like a hydrogen peroxide. All these are fine. I think potassium permanganate is both the safest and the scariest at the same time, in that if you don't rinse it really, really well, it's really terrifying if it gets in your tank. But if you do it right, it is the gentlest, and it lets you soak your plants for like 15 minutes and does the least damage to the plant, but will oxidize off parasites and all kinds of other stuff. So it's the combo of like, it is the scariest if it gets in your tank. It is the safest methodology for doing the deed while not causing damage to your plants, where like bleach will, if you leave something in bleach or peroxide too long, it's gone. It's dead. It's nuked. And if it's a very sensitive plant in general, it's nuked, period. There are some plants that you literally can't dip them at all. An example would be like Crypt Albita Red. There's a couple other that Redfish, Bluefish, and I were talking about on the phone recently, where there's some plants that you just can't dip them. You'll kill them, all of them. They just insta die. They're so finicky, and you run risks of getting all sorts of fun things in your tank because of where they come from, where they've been harvested, and stuff like that. So it's so fun. But where possible, I would look at potassium permanganate. That's probably your best bet. Any tips for Monte Carlo? Calcium. Monte Carlo is a hard water plant. It really soft water. If the water doesn't have enough calcium or it's too soft, your Monte Carlo will just die. No matter how much CO2 and how much other nutrients you push at it, it will just die. It likes calcium. It likes harder water. So the way that you get around this is you can either supplement your substrate with something like montmorillonite clay, or like all the ADA additives and stuff like that help put all sorts of nutrients down in the substrate layer. But those are the expensive version of doing it the right way. Which is, you are doing it the right way with the ADA products, but there's the cheap way of doing it that they have gussied up and made the expensive way. Because it makes them money. but it's also an easier solution because it's 3 lines. You just do this, and you don't have to like know how to measure out, well, how much laterite clay powder do I use, how much montmorillonite clay do I use, how much of this do I use, because it's all fairly potent, and if you don't do it right, it oversaturates very, very fast. But the easiest way is just make sure that you have good, like, reasonably hard water. You don't want like hard water, but you want at least like 100 TDS in your water and a reasonable amount of calcium. That's going to be the best solution to a very healthy Monte Carlo. A little bit of CO2 and good light goes a long way, but without a little calcium, you're in trouble. Warren Williams. What's up, man? How do I buy your plants? You live in Washington. So I sell my plants locally a little more regularly. It just depends on my schedule. It's harder for me to ship, especially right now. It's too cold. There's ways, but the shipping costs would probably get more expensive than the plants would be worth, because you have to, it's like what the co-op does. You have to styrofoam line them. You have to put a heat pack in with them and all this stuff because it's cold and plants will suffer. But there's, the easiest way is just be local to the Seattle area and shoot me an email. It's bentley.pasco@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you and tell you what I have available, and we can try and schedule something out, or just have you come over and look through what I have, and we can pick some plants and do something like that. But long term, I'm trying to get it to where I can more reliably, my girlfriend's sleeping, more reliably ship stuff through Get Gills. And when I can do that more efficiently, then I will more regularly keep stuff up on my Get Gill store and have it available for folks to ship across the U.S. Let's see here. We'll do a couple more questions, and then we'll be getting close to the 2-hour mark, and that is when I will be calling it a day, because I have a whole bunch of maintenance and filming I have to get done. So Tiffany Bruce is asking, who in Washington is the Caridina shrimp expert? Robert at the co-op hooked it up with a bunch of crystal blacks, and I can't find good info on Taiwan bees and tigers. So if you're looking for someone to specifically talk to in Washington for Caridina, you could talk to Corvus Oskin. That's Joel. He has done lots of Caridina shrimp in the past. He's very, very familiar with keeping them, especially the crystal lines, and some of the Taiwan bees. He's really, really good at that stuff. There are some like other secret shrimp gurus that I only know by screen names on certain forums, so that's not really great help. And realistically, it's perfectly okay to take some of the like understanding and knowledge from folks like Rob at Flip Aquatics and just apply them to our water out here. For the most part, it's usually like use RO water, add supplement. That's how you establish your water. Then from there, just feed them right. But you can apply that here, even though our water is like so soft, it's basically RO. But just don't be afraid. Or like Mark's Shrimp Tanks, for example, even though he's out in Scotland, he's still super knowledgeable shrimp guy, teaches lots of good stuff. Also, comically very entertaining to watch. Trying to think who else is like really good for shrimp. I mean, there's tons. Is really what it comes down to. There's tons and tons and tons of people. The other person that I would talk to, if you really want to get good information, who is a super Caridina expert, that's going to be Eric Lucas, who owns buypetshrimp.com. He's a really nice guy, really informative. He carries phenomenal shrimp products, and just is a really sweet guy. Has an awesome store, does lots of stuff down in California, which California water's pretty close to ours, so that might be another option to look at. Green Ranger, thanks for answering the question. Time to get back to work. Have a good day at work, man. Have a good day. Cyclo23 is mentioning like 67k subs and he never heard of you. Yeah, well, like MD Fish Tanks, like in a year has had some phenomenal growth. It's pretty impressive. Frank White. Oh, this question, I have to answer this, but I hate answering it at the same time. How do you feel about duckweed in an aquarium? Good water purifier, a disease to the tank, both. So how I like duckweed is the way that Joel uses it. And that is not in the aquarium, but down in the sump. Because you can use duckweed as like the canary in the coal mine. In the sense that Duckweed will respond to nutrient deficiencies very, very fast compared to everything else in your tank. So if like one chamber of your sump is covered in duckweed, and then 2 days later half that duckweed's gone, or you're not like just fishing out tons of duckweed all the time, something's going wrong. And you can address it faster before it affects everything else, because the duckweed is going to be the first thing that starts showing signs of problems, because it absorbs so much so fast. And if you have it localized to a sump, it's not covering the top of your tank, but you still get all the benefits of it down in your sump. Now, if you don't use a sump, I hate duckweed. Yeah, I hate that stuff. Mostly because it's such a pox. It's like getting rid of it, such a pain. And it grows so fast and can get stuck to plants and make it harder to feed and prevent surface vegetation and lots, all that stuff that makes us hate duckweed. But it is really good at being your warning symbol for some other kind of issue as far as a whole planted tank is concerned. So that is my opinion on duckweed. Controversial as it may be. Empty fish tanks. It's just buy loads of parva from Tropica. Tropica, it's hard to get good Tropica plants here in the Seattle area. Otherwise, I would. You guys get it. You guys have it way better off over in Europe. Way, way better than we do. But yeah. Okay, so another question from Mike. When you move plants from one tank to another, is there any way to make sure there isn't eggs on the plants? I trimmed some plants from one of my community tanks to grow out, and now they're a fry, and they are most likely hybrids. So this is where you could use like a potassium permanganate soak, because the oxidation will kill the eggs. You could also have snails. The snails will eat the eggs. Or just, when you see the fry, if you think that they're going to be hybrids, scoop the fry out and get rid of them. If you're not a big softie like me who like thinks of that as like the worst thing to do, like you're going to do everything you can to keep your fish alive, even if they're hybrids, because you'll just put them in a community tank or something. If you're not that big softie, that's a way to go. Not the best answer, I know, but okay. So, this is aquatic highs. Any low pH, low GH aquarium plant recommendations? Okay, so basically, we want soft, low pH water. Yeah, Java fern does really well. Most stems, so like your Rotalas, your Pogastamons, your Ludwigias, they all actually do very well in slightly acidic, soft water. They get faster nutrient uptake and growth when they do that. That's almost the case for almost every stem. The only time is certain Hygrophilas, the more like woody, reedy stems tend to like slightly harder water, but even then, like I have super soft water in one of my plant growing tanks, and like Persicaria, which is a newer species, it's not as common yet. The Sao Paulo is probably the most common, followed shortly by the India if you can find it. Those grow like gangbusters in soft water. The other thing you could look at is my brain is not working. Crypts also tend to be really good. They like iron and not necessarily hard water. They will grow in hard water, but like crypts do well in softer water with good iron. There's lots of options. Mostly stems, like all your stems grow really well. Alternanthera, that's what I'm thinking of. Alternantheras do really great in soft water. Just give them lots of good iron and a little bit of CO2 and they'll go gangbusters for you. Code 1635. What else could cause light-colored Anubias leaves and Java fern leaves, as well as falling apart, besides nitrate deficiency? So you're talking like yellowish tones. So anytime I'm gonna Hi, Priscilla. Good to see you. I'm just gonna give you a link. Because this matters. Do, 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 do. This is not the graphic for this, but this is just a short like table with the info. This is a quick list of what to look for and what deficiency it is in aquatic plants. There's a great, if you just look up plant deficiencies aquarium, there's a great like visual graphic that will show you what they look like and what each deficiency is. But that's the best way. Those are the best options. So I would just consult that, because that's going to tell you the exact same information I would tell you, because I would literally look at that deficiency chart and fathom a guess without sitting and playing with it. There's lots of options though. So yeah. Rumor has it that Bentley lives with a Pokemon, no Snorlax. There's a funny story surrounding Snorlax. So my girlfriend is a huge Pokemon fan. She loves Pokemon, the video game specifically, and used to and will again probably soon play it competitively. And she the last tournament she went to that I took her down to Portland for, she got beat up by a guy using a Snorlax, and I had been ranting and raving because Snorlax is actually my favorite Pokemon. Who'd thunk? And and I'd made jokes that, you know, like Snorlax was like secretly the god Pokemon, and if you run into one, you'll just wreck your day. And she was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't played since the very first game came out, old man." And then it turns out she lost one. And I don't let her live that one down. She's actually got me playing. I started playing the newest Pokemon game, Sword and Shield. And that's she's got me playing it, and it's been pretty fun getting back into a game. I played one as a little kid, you know, from the very first Pokemons were out when I was like 13. So it's been or no, I think I was like 16 when it came out. But it's been fun because I played it with like all my little cousins who are a lot younger than I am, and they all played, so we all played together. And you know, each of us had like a different version. Like I had red, and most of my cousins had blue. It was fun, super fun. It's been fun getting kind of back into it. You okay over there? Poor thing, she's tired. All right. Let me dog. Too many breeding projects, not enough aquariums. Choice 1, reduce number of projects. Or choice 2, increase number of tanks and risk having the hobby go from enjoyable to work. Thoughts? So I already have 23 tanks in my house, and am removing some tanks temporarily so that I have, because I've mentioned this before, the power in my house is wired horribly. So and I explained this to some of my family over Christmas, and my dad just like looked at me like I was a crazy person, because the only fish he kept when I was a kid were koi, and he never had to heat them. So he's like, "What are you using all this power for?" And I'm like, "Dad, they're all tropical fish. I have to heat them." And he's like, "Oh," because he's like, "I had koi. I never had to heat them." Yeah, Dad, I know. But remember the tank upstairs with the angelfish that we did have to heat? It's like, yeah, okay. But so anyway, I have to, in order to get Animal House with all its proper gear, I actually have to take tanks down, because I'm so close to breaking the circuit as far as power is concerned, that in order to heat that tank, I will pop my circuit breaker, guaranteed. So I have smaller tanks that I'm tearing down, which I've mentioned this in Tank of the Week, in order to reduce some power so that I can have Animal House up and running. And then eventually the goal is to like figure out funding and time and get my garage converted and turn that into like a full functioning singular fish room, and then I'll have, you know, dedicated breaker boxes and lots more power out there, and get it rewired and blah blah blah. I mean, it's something that'll probably cost like $15,000-$20,000. I don't know, a lot. I mean, if you've ever watched, like, Dan's Fish has this phenomenal thing about how he built his current fish room, and he's doing a series now about building his new expanded the building in the back part of his property. And, like, he breaks down the cost of his fish room, and it's like, he's got a really nice one, and it's one of those things where you're just like, all right, that's a little chunk of change. It's a little chunk of change to do it really nicely. And, you know, like, Corey's done great builds and stuff like that. And if you really try to go, like, a hardcore fish room, they're a little spendy. They're going to cost you easily $10,000 or more. It's usually more. But long-term goal is to build myself a fish room. And then, at that point, I will change from number of projects to increasing tanks. And when the system auto water changes, it still remains enjoyable because you remove some of the work. You kind of have to choose what work you enjoy. So, like, for an example, I love feeding fish. So I will never use auto feeders unless I'm on vacation, and even then I will probably plan it so that someone like, say, Joel or Alex or a friend that I trust can come over and feed my fish once during that time. And as long as they eat once in the middle and I don't have a bunch of baby fish, they'll be fine. But in your case, you kind of have to ask yourself that question. Like, I could tell you that based on my work schedule, I would reduce number of projects. But that's just because I don't have the time to put in all that extra work. If I had the time to put in the extra work, I personally would be willing to do the extra work because I enjoy the projects so much. So it's, what do you enjoy more? Is it the projects or less work? If doing more work to have more projects is a totally good trade-off for you, there's your answer. But if it's one of those things where you're like, man, I don't know if I can keep up with that much work, and you're going to risk any kind of quality, that's where I chop it off and go, no. You make sure that the quality you provide now or previously can always maintain that level or be better. Yeah, I'm so sorry. She got like 3 hours of sleep, and she is super tired. She's only slept like 3 hours in the last 2 days. So, she's a very, very sleepy lady. Oh, man. So yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I will do auto water change. Like Corey, for example, took away auto water change because he wanted to be more involved in his fish room. For me, I love feeding fish and plants so much that I will always, like, hand fertilize and hand feed my fish, because that keeps me involved with my tanks. But I'll auto water change because that takes work away that I don't need to do, and then I have to do very minimal maintenance, as long as I keep my, like, I pay attention and watch for all my signs of any kind of issue. That's the way that my brain functions, as far as how I would personally approach it if that was my problem or my dilemma. Lumpy Dog, by the way, good to have you. It's always good to have Lumpy Dog around. Yeah, okay. Those will probably be my, like, last 2 questions. This one's really fast. Do I have any extra Madagascar lace plants? Not currently. My Madagascar lace mother plant is a very, very angry plant. It wants CO2, and I won't give it CO2. So it's like, I'm going to grow big. I'm going to immediately melt. I'm going to grow big. I'm going to immediately melt, and, like, never give me babies. But it's still, like, this massive root ball that constantly has new growth. So it's healthy. It just is like, I want CO2 to stay amazing. And I think sometime next year I will actually get it CO2 again. I just have to, it's one of those things where I have to budget getting a new CO2 rig for that room. And there are other things on the budget first that help, like getting Animal House going, which I gotta plan with that bad boy. And getting testing lab going and stuff like that. Those are more high priority than, like, CO2 for that Madagascar lace plant. All right, my last question that I will answer. That's not true. There's 2. One from Secret History living in your aquarium. Any advice for bladderwort? Just keep grabbing it by hand. That stuff's impossible to get rid of. It's the devil. But you can slowly get it out of a tank. But if you have CO2 in that tank, you're never getting rid of it. I deal with that all the time. I just got to pull it out in chunks whenever I can. All right, last question I want to answer. From Sharpies Models and Aquatics. Any tips for raising bristlenose fry? Got them in a breeder box with some wood and a Java fern. I'm feeding algae wafers and high-protein shrimp food. Week old tomorrow. Cucumber and zucchini. Or rapashi. One of the two. Those foods are extremely, extremely good for young plecos. They're great for old plecos, but for young plecos, they're especially our like bristle noses that are more like veg oriented. It's just super, super good food for them to feed on. And you can get, one zucchini, and you don't have to feed them always have zucchini in there or always have cucumber. Both of them are good, but you can get like one a week and have that mixed in with your other foods, and it will help them grow with a pretty good pace. If you don't mind doing rapashi, like a small mix of a different type. So what I would do is I would put in a very small amount, say like a quarter of the spawn and grow to get a higher protein content to help accelerate their growth, and then a bunch of the veg oriented stuff. So not necessarily morning wood, because that's more like wood feeding, but you can use that. That's typically better for your wood feeding plecos than necessarily your bristle noses. He's out. Or was a bottom feeder, and I think they finally released a new veg version. They used to have, what was it, like fruit pie or something like that, and they've made a new version that's more veg oriented for plecos. Use that stuff as the bulk of what you're doing. There's also Jadrin Aquatics. Is that right? I want to look it up just to make sure, because the video is really, really good, and I want to give him proper credit for it, because he has this really good DIY recipe video, and it's not his recipe per se, but he just does a really good video. And I think he does it for his snails, but it also is really good. And also tinned green beans are really great as well. Yeah, okay. It's what he calls tank jello. This video is just super good about how to... I'm going to get you guys a link for it. But this is from Jadrin Aquatics. It's... Yeah. She's gotten a little louder. She's out. But this is from Jadrin Aquatics, which he does a lot of really great videos. Shout out to him. I love that guy. This is what he calls tank jello, which he normally uses for his mystery snails, but it's also a very good food source for plecos. Now, if you're willing to make this, it is a little stinky. There's a lot of products. However, it will go a very long way if you put it together like this. And it's kind of like your own rapashi, but more tailored toward veg-heavy feeders with also a good amount of calcium in it. So it's great for both snails and plecos. Oh, no, it's not it has nothing to do with my voice. My voice will wake her up if I want to. It's the fact that she's had 3 hours of sleep in the last 2 days. she's been struggling with some sleep lately. She's a very sleepy bear. And as you can tell, she's taking a temporary hibernation over there. Anyway, so I'm gonna end the stream. Cichlids. So Cichlids 23, like one of the things you can do is you can get barbecue skewers as long as they're stainless steel as a weight. You don't have to get those corkscrew ones and just have them weighed at the bottom of the tank. I actually just recently bought new ones for myself. I will show you the exact same ones I bought because my old ones were not actual stainless steel. They were cheap dollar store pieces of junk, and they got rusty. So I replaced them with these bad boys right here. One sec. Come on. Dear Amazon. Thank you. And you can get any steel, like stainless steel kebab skewer. These just happen to be the ones I used because they're flat. And they're broad. And they're $15 for 20 of them. They're pretty great. So that, again, another affiliate link. Yes, I get paid. If you click on that and make a purchase, I get a small commission. FTC, there you go. Thanks. I hate those things. Anyway, I hope you guys really enjoyed the stream. Look forward to some of the upcoming testing stuff that's coming forward. There's a few other videos coming out as well. We'll have the last couple of Tank of the Weeks before the poll completes. The poll will go until the first of the year, so all the way through the end of December 31st, 2019. When we've hit the new decade, I'll stop taking results from the poll. So make sure that you go to the community tab I'll give you a link to that one too. Bam. Boom. Go to the community tab. There's going to be a vote about what we do in 2020. There's 4 different options. Make sure you vote there. There's also a video that Candy linked earlier. You can see it on the channel. It's literally the video from this Wednesday. Put that in. You can vote there as well, so you can get 2 votes. If you want to vote for 2 different things, you can vote for one in one place and the other for the other. Or if you really want one thing to happen, vote for the same thing twice. I'll collaborate all the votes between the community tab and that will be the decision going forward for probably 6 months at least in 2020, maybe longer if the one of the options is taken that involves a massive project, which so far is doing a lot better than I thought. So, guys, thank you so much. I want to thank the folks that did super chats today. You know, it's really appreciated. It's never required, but you know, Rogue Aquariums, Buffalo Row, KP, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Your support is always awesome. Candy, I saw you. You linked my Patreon earlier. I thank you, but I do have a Patreon. Also, like for those who are here this long, one last thing. I'm literally doing it now because I haven't enabled it yet, and I wanted to kind of announce it on stream. Technically, the real like large announcement, other than some of this. Holy Lord, honey. What? Oh, she is out. I'm sure you guys hear her. Oh boy. So some interesting stuff, which you won't see this now, but you will very soon, is that the channel qualified for memberships. I have not enabled that until basically right now. I'm literally just doing it now. But this channel is now enabled for memberships. I haven't enabled it because I'm trying to work with an artist through Fiverr to get like emotes and stuff, so we have those and like badges. But yeah, I have to set up all the perks and stuff, so I will be setting that up today, and then we'll have memberships, and I'll try to do some small content as well for members, just because like I do a little bit for Patreon here and there where I can. My Instagram's been not working on my phone for a while now, ever since Android 10. So, Jiminy Christmas, dude. That's the symbol I need to end this bad boy. No, I have a girlfriend in my bedroom which has not been sleeping very well. She's in hibernate mode. All right, guys. I hope you had a fantastic Christmas. Have a fantastic New Year. We got a new species showing up the 31st. That'll be really fun. I'll show you that. It's going to require a huge setup. Very, very cool. And you'll see that very soon. Also, lots of stuff coming. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. And stay awesome. She is so out of it.